Let's talk a little bit about the ASR-10. Credible machine made by a company in Sonic. Prior to the ASR-10, there was a keyboard called the Ensoniq EPS-16 and 16 Plus. That was the first one that I saw. I had a friend that had one, and the capabilities of it was really interesting. It didn't have the oomph of a drum machine. It almost sounded a little bit more sonic and had a sheen to it that could be even good for R&B at the time, I felt. But the abilities that it had as a piece of equipment, ASR standing for Advanced Sampling Recorder. So everything about it was like one step up from the EPS-16 Plus. It was also the first machine that I ever learned on. And when you start doing music, you get a machine, it really becomes part of your sound. And I took a lot of pride in learning the machine. At the time, I didn't know anything about any of the terminology or jargon related to equipment. I didn't know what LFO was. I didn't know what wave samples were. I didn't even know what the word truncate meant or quantize. And I kind of had to find my way through the machine just by learning, okay, you click this thing to say that and it does this. So I really learned in a really hard-headed way. And in that aspect, I never really got the most out of the machine. And in my years of working with it, I would meet people like Jake One or other friends of mine who would show me tricks with the ASR-10 that was like, wow, I didn't even know you could do that. So as a machine, it's like super advanced for the time. And to me, the trick was getting the drums to sound good. It wasn't a drum machine, and there's some type of oomph that you get out of an MPC. Your drums just sound round, and it was really hard to create that with the ASR. So I would spend time treating my samples ahead of time before I sampled them, trying to get them to sound real chunky so that they would hit the way an MPC would hit. But the ASR-10 had so many cool tricks to it. It also came with a whole slew of effects that were like insane at the time, and I really wasn't advanced enough to use it, but I had some friends that were using some of them. Effects where you could run the whole beat through them and get some really cool sounding outcomes that was like not normal. So, I mean, I always had a love-hate relationship with the ASR-10 because it would break down on me a lot. It was stubborn. You know, it was like, it would freeze up on you. You'd lose beats. Sometimes the disk data would be corrupted. But it was such a fulfilling piece of equipment, and I feel like I did the majority of my music that I'm known for. Like my super big known records are mostly all out of the ASR-10. We Gonna Make It, Keep It Thorough for Prodigy, Worst Come to Worst for Dilated Peoples. A lot of like records that kind of made my sound came along with the ASR-10, and I took pride in being one of the guys that, when you saw me, oh man, he uses that machine and he knows what to do with it. And at one point I felt like I was the fastest. Where I would even brag, like, man, I could chop up a record faster than anyone with this thing. Once I got used to sampling, copy, wave sample, and adding it into the keys, I mean, I could chop up a record like I just showed you, 16 pieces in 10, 20 seconds. So I was like becoming very prolific, proficient within the realms of what I needed the machine to do, and that was good enough, and developed the sound. But I really didn't know the words, and I didn't understand a lot of it. I had an end result I was trying to get to. So whatever the words were, if that's what that meant, I need this sample to stop right here. That's what that means? Or how do I cut off the edge of the end of this sample? Truncate? Cool. That's what that means. And you press this button and it gives you back the sample time when you process it. Cool. Oh, no, now I want to adjust my sample, but I already truncated it. I don't want to truncate anymore. Okay, there's little trial and error things that you learn. Like for me, I always like to keep space on the beginning and ends of my samples because might want to adjust them a little bit. I always like the freedom. And the ASR-10 was, and still is to this day, an amazing machine. And if you get a chance to use one, it's one of the analog pieces that I think it's still, as you progress in your sound and move up with technology, it's one of the pieces that's like, if you get a chance to use it, you should experiment with it. Even if you're going to run music through it, into your DAW, and you can still just use it as a sound, just for the sound color, or use it just for the effects. So yeah, but it was, man, I had a great run, and I still go back to it sometimes when I want to just make a beat that reminds me of that era, and I want to flex an old muscle. So I'll bust out the ASR-10, get some old discs, and go to work. But yeah, ASR-10, incredible piece of equipment, and it stood the test of time. If you can find one, good luck. We kind of go through phases as producers where it's like sometimes you might be in a particular style where I was using a lot of claps at the time, which was a way for me to kind of just do something different where, I don't know, it can be a snare, it can be a clap, but adding the claps to the soul samples kind of gave it a certain feel. Yeah, so right now I got the effects off because it'll give you 30K, or you can go to 44K or the 23 voice, so it really was a very slight difference. But yeah, I didn't use too much effects, except sometimes I would use delay. So I would try to keep it very simple, and even if I use a delay effect here, I would track the beat with the delay. So I wasn't like trying to figure out how to make the delay later in Pro Tools, because that's a way you could do it too. You know, you can use the effects here, then make it flat and redo it in Pro Tools so you have the bleed. So, you know, when you mute a track, if it's got a delay on it, as you mute it, the delay still bleeds. With this, I would write it in with the delay, so that's what it was. If you muted it, the bleed wasn't there, it wouldn't continue delaying. But the delay would have a certain feel to it where I felt it was important to keep it that way. Because like I said, I really want it to sound like the way it is coming out of the machine, so I'm not dependent on too many effects later. But yeah, ASR, you know, if it wasn't the zip drive, which allowed you to save more than one beat, it would always be these floppy disks. And I have a lot of them that I can go back to and kind of reminisce. And it's pretty cool because I can I've documented my progression. So there's a lot of beats I have on these floppy disks that are like, I wasn't ready yet. And I'm able to like listen to where I was at the time. And so by the time I was putting out records in like the mid-90s, I had already a couple years of practice and beats on disc where I was not ready yet. And I can listen to it now and tell I was still trying to find my style. So I think that's cool, and I'm sure you'll have your version of that now. There'll be like an old hard drive that you probably have that's like your early beats and your early productions. And I recommend you save all that, catalog everything, back up all your hard drives 10 times. I can't stress that enough. Like something that you're working on now that you probably don't care about will be priceless in 15 or 20 years.